Welcome back. This demo still has some content to look at that we need to use cheats or hacking to access. I'll put LXShadow's cheat codes down in the description along with all his other research for this game. I made heavy use of it to make this video. Character flags. Somewhere in memory, the game stores a series of flags which each determine whether you have a specific ability, item, attack, etc. We can use a memory editing program like Cheat Engine to modify these flags, which lets us use abilities and items that the demo normally never gives us. There are some flags which don't seem to do anything, so I won't mention all of them in order. The first flag determines whether we can double jump and horn dive. The third flag determines whether we have the extra hit point upgrade. We can buy this from the shop in the demo and it works exactly like in the final game. The fifth flag determines whether we can pole spin. This works pretty much like in the final game as well. The 6th, 7th and 8th flag determines whether Spyro can use ice, electric and water breath respectively. We'll take a look at those in a bit. The 10th flag determines whether you have the double jump power up enabled. This has no visual indication but works the same way as in the final game. The 13th and 14th flag determines whether supercharge and invincibility is active respectively. I couldn't get these to work, but if I do I might make a short video about it. All I know is that these flags definitely control something, since the game resets them immediately after setting them using Cheat Engine. The 15th flag determines whether you can only purchase lockpicks in the shop. This is used for the beginning of the game to make sure the player doesn't bankrupt themselves before they can progress. The 16th flag determines whether Spyro can windshield. The wingshielding in this demo is strange. It seems closer to how it was in Spyro Into the Dragonfly. You can't turn while shielding like in the final game. Also, while it doesn't look like it, the shield does block projectiles from all directions. The 17th flag determines whether Spyro can wall kick. I unfortunately can't get this one to work, even though it worked in the earlier demos. In the earlier demos, however, it works pretty much the same as in the final game. The 18th flag determines whether Spyro has the horn dive upgrade. This one does nothing, since Spyro already has the upgraded horn dive at the start of the demo. I think this upgrade was implemented later when they realized how few shop items they had. The 19th flag determines whether Spyro has the butterfly jar. This one doesn't appear to be in this demo. Let's take a look at the unfinished breath types. The demo normally only lets us use fire breath. These other breath types are very unfinished, and sometimes they have very different particle effects and behaviors. The electric breath is probably the buggiest out of all of them. It often sticks to the air after you stop attacking with it. Spyro's animation for it is also very different and quite ridiculous, to be honest. Electric breath, weirdly enough, can't break any gem containers unlike in the final game. Also, weird things happen when you move slowly while using it. A lot of enemies don't have any animation for being stunned, so they'll do a completely unrelated animation when you electrify them. Some enemies take a ridiculous amount of time to kill with this breath. Water breath works quite differently compared to the final game. A lot of enemies are just completely unaffected by it, and some enemies unexpectedly die from it. In the final game it's only supposed to stun enemies and kill the occasional fire enemy. Ice breath still freezes enemies, but charging enemies afterwards can be a little fiddly, and even impossible at times. Some enemies with armor can't be frozen, but others can. The ice crystal also has very unfinished visuals, and sometimes it doesn't even appear. Now let's take a look at some of the unused breath ammo in this demo. The electricity bolts still home in on enemies, but they only consist of one projectile instead of 3. Visually, it looks very different. The water bombs are pretty much like in the final game, except for some minor visual and audio changes. The ice missiles have some buggy particle effects, but also works like in the final game. One interesting thing to note is that all the breath ammos except for fire don't decrease in amount when you fire one. Water, and only water, is the only one that can still be fired when you have 0 water bombs. Also, if you're moving, water bombs have no cooldown timer, which lets you just spam it. Unused maps. There aren't a lot of unused maps in this demo compared to the final, and most of them are also in the final game's files. The 2 maps that are unique to this demo are rather interesting though. Most of these maps have next to no sound, since they have no sound banks assigned to them. Alright, let's go through each of them. Map test. This is a small map featuring a very low detail boxing ring with the Worldwide Fund for Nature logo in the middle. None of this has collision. No idea what this logo is doing here. This map also exists in the final game's files. Hogwarts. Yes, you heard that correctly. This is a large map of Hogwarts, which is likely taken from a previous Harry Potter game by Eurocom. A lot of the castle has missing textures and collision is very inconsistent. There are a few large objects at one end of the map around Hagrid's house. Next to it is an entire building with most of the visuals missing. I have no idea what this map was used for during development. This map also exists in the final game's files. Playroom. This is a very small depth textured room with a few gems and some models of Hunter from Spyro Into the Dragonfly and Spyro. The Spyro model appears to be an even earlier version than is used in this demo due to his back having more spikes. This map also exists in the final game's files. Titles. This is probably the most interesting map in this demo. It appears to be an early version of Gnasty Gnorc's lair, though unfortunately Gnasty is nowhere to be seen. It doesn't just have the bridge and the boss arena though, it also has entirely cut areas next to it, including a minecart rail that looks kind of similar to the Ball Gadget minecart stage in the final game. This section has an untextured minecart on either end, both can't be interacted with. The other few sections consist of two arena-looking areas with big ravine-like tunnels connecting them. Also noteworthy is that these connecting areas have ambient sounds, which is unusual for these unused maps. My theory is that the Gnasty Gnorc fight had originally taken place at multiple locations rather than just one platform, and this early map is leftover content from that. The final game also has a map named Titles, but it's just the actual title screen map this time. Testbed. This is a small area with several platforms, objects, enemies, and also coordinate markers. There's not a lot of interesting stuff here, other than an enemy from Coastal Remains, which is a level that doesn't exist in this demo. It's pretty unfinished as it can only die from charging or horn diving. This map also exists in the final game's files. Shop. This is a small room with smaller tunnels connected to it via small doorways. The name suggests that this is an early concept for Moneybags' shop, though it's tough to say whether we're going with this. The only character that can sometimes get through these tiny doorways is Sparks with his unused control scheme present in the final game. This map also exists in the final game's files. R1 Link AB. This is an early version of the Link map from the Dragon Village to Crocodile Swamp, which appears in the final game. The Dragon Village music even starts playing when touching the loading trigger for it, though the level doesn't actually load. The chasm that you cross with a floating platform in the final game doesn't exist here. There's a horn dive chest in this map with very strange properties. It can't be horn dived. Instead you must flame to destroy it. Yes, I tried with other breaths. I'm unsure of why this one horn dive chest acts this way. If you try to load Crocodile Swamp by touching the loading trigger, the game will expectedly crash, since the map file isn't in this demo. If you cheat your way around the loading trigger, then you'll actually hear the music fade into Crocodile Swamp's track. As a side note, if you want to hear this demo's full soundtrack, there's a link in the description to a full soundtrack rip I uploaded. Model. This is an early version of the starting area in Dragon Village, with a ton of the game's NPC models put in. This map also exists in the final game's files, but a few of the models here are either missing or in different positions. Lily originally had a different design. Elder Magnus was originally red instead of pink, it seems. This change might have been done alongside the change of voice actor for the character, as voice lines recorded for him exist both in this demo and in the final game's files with a completely different voice.
Spyro, darling, you'll need to learn as much as you can to help you in your quest to find Red.
Spyro, you'll need to learn as much as you can to help you in your quest to find Red.
Also worth noting is that Elder Astor is nowhere to be seen, so maybe he wasn't even modeled at this point. The map itself is also quite interesting. The shop and the lab are in completely different spots. The teleporter is in the middle. Judging from early footage, the realms probably all had the teleporter in the middle early in development. This version of the map, or at least a similar one, was seen in one of the game's trailers, unfortunately only for a split second though. There's also an extra tunnel opposite of the shop. I suspect this tunnel would have led to Elder Thomas's cave, or it could have been the original entrance for Gnasty's lair, since that can't be found in its final spot in this map. Interestingly, although the center area is the only part of the map that exists, all the ambient sounds play in their original spots. So we could theoretically partially map out this early version of the level by listening for the ambience. R1 Link BC. This map is interesting because its file name suggests that it's the link map between Crocodile Swamp and Dragonfly Falls, even though no such thing exists in the final game. This is just a less finished version of the first ball gadget stage. Instead of a hole as the entrance, there's a pipe in the wall, which was probably the original way you were supposed to enter and exit the stage. We can't check out the entrance to Dragonfly Falls, since that part of the map doesn't appear to be modeled. There's a bunch of assets out of bounds, which I suspect was used by the mappers to copy-paste from. Realm 1Z. This appears to be a nearly finished version of Gnasty's lair. There are beta versions of Gnasty Gnorc in earlier demos. You can check out LXShadow's videos showcasing them in the description. In this demo, however, the camera does lock onto the center of the arena when you get close, but Gnasty never appears. Some extra ground also appears when you're close to the arena. There are 5 maps which crash upon loading. If anyone is willing to try and crack these, be my guest. Mini 1A and Mini 2A I suspect are minigame maps, but they don't follow the naming format that the game usually uses. Realm 5A and Realm 5B are interesting as they seem to indicate there was a 5th realm early in development. One of the music tracks in the demo, as well as in the final game, is also named Realm 5B, but this is simply Hunter's theme in Dragonfly Falls. This 5th cut realm might also explain why there are so many levels in the 4th realm of the final game, since some of the 5th realm's levels might have been moved to the 4th realm. Then there's Realm 1B2, which might be an alternate version of Crocodile Swamp of some kind, judging by the file name. Extra notes. When you swim over the edge of a water surface in this demo, Spyro will enter his underwater state. In the final game you'll just fall out. I suspect they changed this to prevent swimming in air. Here's the placeholder texture for when no map can be displayed. It's just a crudely drawn texture with the words "no map." In the final game it says "out of scanner range." Wall grinding is impossible in this demo. My guess is that they introduced some bugs with the animations when tweaking them for the final game. You can use breath attacks underwater if you quickly dive after pressing the breath button. Here's a clip of the enemy that falls through the ground in this area in Dragon Village. The devs forgot about this guy when removing the collision here. The ball gadget's collision is completely broken in Dragon Village for whatever reason. In Dragon Village, there's a weird cog located under the ground in the Sergeant Bird area, which is never seen in the final game. I suspect this is a scrapped object that they repurposed for making the sound effect for the rising platforms. It even still spins when the platforms move. The textures for it don't match the game's art style, so it's likely a placeholder texture from a previous Eurocom game. You can enter the loading zone for the Sergeant Bird minigame just by walking into it. Obviously it still freezes the game. There's a weird wooden platform below the ground in a spot in Dragonfly Falls. It also exists in the final game, though it isn't solid there. Also in Dragonfly Falls, a bunch of waterfalls are placed behind some walls. My guess is that these are temporary objects that the designers used to copy-paste from. The whirlwinds actually have sound, but they didn't load in my other video for some reason. Interestingly, this is the portal sound from Spyro into the Dragonfly. I forgot to show off the braking with the ball gadget in my last video, so here it is. It has different sound and particle effects, but otherwise works like in the final game. For some reason, some of the green gems have a different animation when underground, where it spins on its tip instead of rolling around. This demo has an idle timer that ends the demo after you leave the game idle for 1 minute. However, even if we disable this timer with cheats, there's yet another idle timer that spits you back to the main menu after 4 minutes. Thanks for watching. I've learned quite a lot about this game and its development while researching this demo, and I hope you found it as interesting as I have. Huge thanks to LXShadow. Without his prior research, I couldn't have shown as much as I did. Links to his channel and research folder will be in the description. Also, this is my first time doing commentary like this. I'd love to hear your feedback on these videos. I'm planning on making a video on all the test maps in the final game at some point, of which there is a lot more to talk about. That's all. Have a nice day.